joined now by ABC 24 anchor Pepper Baker, who has been joining us just now in the studio to help get us some extra reaction on exactly what's going on. Pepper, thanks for joining us.
Ruben, thank you. Yes, to give us just a little bit more perspective is Pastor Earle Fisher, a friend of our show from Abyssinian Baptist Church. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, thank you. So we did talk about this just last week. I want to touch on that interview, but first off, just your reaction.
Heart-wrenching, disappointing, frustrating, agonizing. My heart goes out to Brother Rodney and Sister Rovon Wells and the Tyre Nichols family. And I mean, if I'm honest, my initial impulse is akin to Nina Simone, who said, Mississippi, goddamn, Memphis, goddamn. I don't know what to make of this in terms of the truth and justice of it all, because this definitely doesn't seem to align with what I understand about truth and justice. And so there's definitely going to be some things we have to reconsider over the next few days and weeks and months and years. If you look at the state of policing, and I heard D.A. Mulroy commentate on the need for continual advocacy around criminal justice reform, I think this shows us just how far we are from any type of semblance of criminal justice reform that protects black lives. Because if you can be killed on video and you can be brutalized the way that Tyre Nichols was, and people who were a part of it, all with a policy duty to intervene, are not found culpable to any degree of any of these charges, I don't know how anybody who believes in truth and justice could actually stand for this.
Now, you said last week when we met that I asked you, what does justice look like in this trial? And you said it's whatever the family, but specifically Rovon Wells, wants out of the conviction. So you already touched on it, but how do you think that she's processing this information right now?
I don't want to speculate on her reaction any more than I want to, commentate on some of the shortcomings that I saw in the prosecution. I think in a sense all of this is a kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, but I do think we need to honor the humanity of Sister Rovon, Brother Rodney, the Nichols family, and the humanity of Tyre Nichols. And I don't think that this result, this verdict, represents that. I think fundamentally, Pepper, we're in between what I see as culture and policy. There's clearly a gap, because C.J. Davis got on national television in 2023 and said unequivocally that the officers, all 5 of them, violated policy and did not follow their training. And now we have a verdict here saying what they did was in alignment with training and policy. And I didn't see the prosecution put on the same type of zealous prosecution that they did for the Young Dolph murder trial. They called 17 witnesses in the Young Dolph murder trial. In this one, they called 5. And the defense called 17. And if I'm honest, from what I saw, I didn't see the entirety of it, but I sat in that courtroom right behind Sister Rovon and Brother Rodney. Now, I saw basically all-white jury do something that I had not known all-white juries do, which is try to humanize black defendants. And I don't think they were doing it because they were black. I think they were doing it because they were police officers. I saw and I heard and I felt this gap between what people say is policy as it relates to criminal justice reform, but a culture of policing that justifies and validates this, that in all likelihood is going to get worse as you got the federal government and the President of the United States sending signals that policing like this is not only appropriate, but in a lot of ways encouraged. This is a dangerous precedent and a dangerous moment to be in. And so my heart and my prayers are with the family of Tyre Nichols. I know there's more to come, but I don't know who can be objectively proud of this result.
A lot to unpack there, because that was quite a passionate statement you gave. So I do want to kind of go back to where you felt the prosecution calling 5 witnesses and then the defense calling 17. So where did you feel at what moment the defense might have carried or had the game, not the game, but the trial more in their favor?
So I sensed a rather zealous defense from the jump. They were extremely passionate. I didn't feel that same energy from the prosecution, honestly, until I think it was the district attorney, Tanisha Johnson, gave that final kind of rebuttal. And then I saw kind of pieces come together from a prosecutorial standpoint. But again, I don't think if these are not police officers that you only end up with 5 witnesses being called. I listened to my dear brother Andre Warden commentate earlier in the week and even today, saying that he felt that the defense was relying on the videotape. And I mean, in a sense, you would like to think that people would believe the video as it speaks for itself, but the prosecution and the defense, between the two of them, had opportunities to discuss some of the things that people hadn't seen on video, but you could hear the articulation of these officers and what they were describing, and I think they called it verbal judo or something like that. And all of those things put together, and all of those charges. Now, on the one hand, I think people can argue that the prosecution attempted to overcharge because the threshold for intent is so high. But as I understand it, the judge allowed them the opportunity, the jury the opportunity, to consider the lesser charges. They were acquitted of all of them. And so it seems like if you add a rather modest, maybe even mediocre prosecution with a zealous defense and a basically all-white jury, what you get is black life equals nothing.
You did say that last week that the jury was not made up of the peers of the people. So expand a little bit more on that, the jury coming from the Chattanooga area and how that really played a key part of this trial.
So I think historically when we looked at high-profile trials and you have seen race undoubtedly being one of the primary elements for the results of the defense. This is why I can tell you this is the first time I've seen a jury attempt to humanize 3 black men in a murder trial, right? 3 black defendants in a murder trial. It's the first time I've seen that. I think when you have a practically all-white jury and they come from a practically conservative area, it is much more likely that they would be sympathetic to law enforcement in ways that more diverse juries just historically have not been, because I think most of the jurors cannot relate to driving while black. So those are some of the elements that we need to discuss as we think more comprehensively and concretely about what it actually means to be in this system that claims to be about justice, but so often has unjust results like the one we experience today.
What do you make of being on the jury and then listening to those medical experts give detailed descriptions of what he looked like in the hospital, how severe his injuries were, and then being kind of a switch from the defense making the play on all of the things they found in Nichols' car, right. Kind of almost making a play to justify the officer's actions, but then having heard how just severely he was beaten, what do you just make of how the jury comprehended that and still came to their conclusion?
We talked about this last week. Historically, you have seen a tactic by defense attorneys to put the person who was brutalized on trial. You saw it with Mike Brown back in 2014. You say he stole a pack of cigarettes from a store, he was being aggressive to somebody who was in there. Had nothing to do with what happened with him and the police officer who ultimately killed him. You've seen them do the same thing with the George Floyd trial, try to talk about drugs that was in the system. They did the same thing with Tyre. I mean, case by case, go down to the start of the Black Lives Matter movement was with my brother in Sanford, Florida. And they talked about him wearing a hoodie and things of that nature. So there's constantly an attempt to demonize the person who was actually victimized by law enforcement. And I think that's what you saw here. And again, true to form, it plays on certain juries.
Yes, it does. And explosive news today, but I do want to ask you about looking ahead and looking forward. So what does the Memphis Police Department need to do? How do you feel the trust is right now, or the connection or relationship between the community and MPD? Can they overcome and still build trust within Memphians after an outcome like this?
I'll say something that I've written about publicly and have said to most of the people, and I got a bunch of people within the police department that I got deep love for. People who I went to school with, you know, people who I value as human beings overall, and even people who protect and serve more specifically. And the black fact is, I don't think there's enough political courage out there. I don't think there's enough political courage from Mayor Young with all of his benevolence. I don't think there's enough political courage out there with Chief Davis. I don't think there's enough political courage out there with D.A. Mulroy, who I love and respect. All of these people, you know, I respect them as human beings, but we're talking about what it means to be able to bend the wheel of a system that is clearly and concretely set up against a particular group of people. I don't see that out there. So that's what ultimately is going to take. And so now it's incumbent upon the community to do what we have to do to create the environment and the context where those things become more likely.
Okay, that's definitely an interesting perspective. Pastor Fisher, thank you so much. We're probably going to keep you around just to continue this conversation. Sure.